Wouldn't it be nice if Adam Sandler didn't count the dates up all so wrong? And wouldn't it be nice to talk together in a format that goes way too long? You know it's time to rewind, baby, for 19 dates of this movie with Drew Barry. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Good morning, listeners. It's another beautiful day here on It's Time to Rewind. I'm your host, Bubbawheat, and joining me today is my guest, Jon Parker. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. And this season we are discussing what was the movie again?
51st dates.
Oh, right. Well, actually, it is 19 first dates, and we are going through them one date at a time. This week's date is what I'm calling their 16th date because it is their 16th interaction and their 11th on-screen date, which, according to last week, if we add in the 23 first kisses that they referenced, it would be their 31st date, if you
This
count all of
detective
that.
work is insane.
Yes.
Oh my God, like mind blown already.
And it starts at 72 minutes and 10 seconds with a rude awakening, and it ends at 79 minutes and 57 seconds with one last first kiss. So, I mean, I'm glad to have you on for this, and I am curious of what your history is with 51st dates and your general experience with Adam Sandler movies as a whole.
Wow. Okay. So I think I was the perfect age really to be. I was really into Adam Sandler. I'm not so much now, but as a kid, as like teenager, I think it might have been. I I loved them all. Like I loved Little Nicky. These days I don't really like that, but I loved it back then. I thought it was great. Happy Gilmore was always the best one for me. That one still holds up very well. I love Happy Gilmore. I was introduced to that by my sister. She's a bit older than me. But this, I'd never seen this, so this was my first viewing. I'd never
Oh,
seen it at
nice.
all, which is shocking because not only is it a movie with him in, but it's bloody Drew Barrymore, who I love, and I'd watched most of her movies too. So I don't know how I'd heard about it, but I don't know how I missed it. Maybe it's just the wrong time it came out or something like that. Uh, I'm guessing it probably was something like that because 2004. Yeah, I wasn't seeing a lot of new movies that year. I'd
Hmm.
I'd moved back to England because I'd been living in I was in Pakistan actually. I lived in Cyprus before that. I was living in Pakistan and then I moved back to England on my own only a couple of years before. So I was a teenager living on their own. I don't know. I didn't go out a lot. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess I just missed this one. But on the whole, I used to see every Adam Sandler movie before this. Like The Wedding Singer, that was another great one. That one holds
Yeah.
up as well. Really like that one. Bizarrely, I haven't watched anything he's done lately. Like what's that one everyone loved? Uncut Gems. A very different type of film,
Mhm.
but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I feel like other than Uncut Gems, he is primarily like still steeped into his like Netflix contract where he's been
Yeah,
making like practically a movie a year for Netflix.
which I know people make fun of him for. I do. I've done it. But, to him, it's just an easy gig, right? Which I can't fault him for. If I could get an easy gig, if my work life was this simple, like we're going to pay you millions and millions to just go to like exotic locations and shoot a movie with your friends for a couple of months. You're like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's the movie star equivalent of like the music stars that have a run in Vegas.
Absolutely. And again, I mean, one of my favorites, I love Lady Gaga. She's doing that even. Lady
Mm.
Gaga's doing Vegas things. So it's like, well, yeah, okay. It's it's not exactly the most creative thing you could be choosing to do, but it's like a walk in the park. Who cares?
Hmm.
I can't fault him too much. And people always point out that he's kind of he's sort of a swindle. He just gets nice holidays and hangs out with his friends partying. Cool,
Hmm.
I want to do that. That sounds great.
Yeah, and get paid, a few million dollars for that too.
If I could steal millions off some Hollywood corporation, yeah, great, do it. Do it, Adam.
I feel like I feel like we're tying into Fight Club, which pull the curtain back. We just even though this will come out much sooner than our Fight Club episodes, but we're recording this right after spending 2 hours talking about Fight Club.
That's why I'm in this mode. That's why this attitude's in me. It's like, come on, yeah, Adam, take him down.
But let's go ahead and jump into today's date. And I feel like this is, this movie jumps back and forth between like sweet moments and sad moments and comedic moments. And this is the nice bit of comedy that kicks into after the bittersweetness of the previous scene where with them falling asleep together. And I feel like this is a combination of hilarious and horrific at the same time.
1,000%. That's almost exactly what I've written because sometimes I found in this that the tonal shift was a little jarring. I won't lie, it didn't always work for me. This, right? I loved this. This got a genuine like cackle out of me. But at the same time, imagine how terrifying it would be for her, knowing
Mm,
what she's going through. Because we know full well at this point, what's happening to her. She she must be like so scared. There's a random man in her bed.
yeah. And he knows things about her. I think it's completely logical that she jumps to a stalker conclusion. And
Yeah.
that's I feel like that's exactly the correct conclusion to make. That's it's some woman wakes up and there's a man that she's never met before in her bed, and he's telling her about all these things that he knows about her and her life and the things that she does. You immediately, oh, you're a stalker, you've been following me.
You would think that because she has no reason to believe that he's being truthful. Why
Mm.
would she?
And I
It's
think it's also great that I feel like there's a certain level of setup to this where as an audience, like you don't know, you might not expect it to this level, but you are fully expecting her to wake up and freak out.
yes. Yeah, you're waiting for that moment. From the
Mm,
second you see like what the scene is, you're like, oh, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And I like that tension of the build because
mm,
there's she's not gonna just suddenly recognize it. Which actually, if I can jump ahead to the the end of the movie, I do appreciate the way the movie doesn't end super. It's not super happy. It's not like, oh yeah, she's
mm.
cured now, everything's fine. I thought that was more realistic. Of like, oh okay, that they've just learned ways of dealing with the problem.
Yeah,
But you
I've
need to
talked
go through
about that.
situations like this, I think, to get to that step.
Yeah, I've talked about that a lot in this movie, that I feel like that this is a very good movie about dealing with disability, and
Yes.
especially with the way that it ends, because they don't magically fix her memory problem.
No,
They
I was
have,
shocked.
yeah, they have found a way uh, to accommodate her disability and still allow her to live a more normal life.
That those sort of things were the best parts for me. That's why I sort of connected with it in ways that I wasn't expecting because I just thought, oh, it's just going to be like a silly comedy, okay. But when it's serious, it really hits home. I think it's really emotional, and you connect with it. And in some ways, I kind of would like to see a serious version of this movie without the comedy. What would that look like?
I say I've said this before, and the fact that I am doing this movie right after covering Memento, I like to point out that Memento is this in a serious way, just without any of the romance involved.
Yeah. Oh my God. Now I'm never going to think of either movie the same again. Jeez. I'll tell you what ties into that is actually what you see immediately after the freak out. It is her family. Because obviously when she freaks out, her family come running. And
Mhm.
throughout the whole movie, I thought they were also one of the best bits, the family.
Yeah.
Because they are trying so hard to help her. It's not cynical or anything like that. They are legitimately looking out for her. And they don't hate him because he's trying to sleep with my daughter. It's not that at all. It's purely because they know it's not going to work. They think this is this is going to cause everyone pain.
Mhm.
They are looking out for her, and they're looking out for him in a way.
Yeah, and I feel like the fact that they are just just outside, like nearby, and they hear the commotion and they immediately run inside. That they were fully expecting something like this to happen, and they were
Yeah,
just waiting for it, but they didn't want to wake her up and like preempt it. They just decided, oh, we'll let her wake up naturally and then we'll deal with the fallout afterwards.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like other movies might, oh, let's do a joke where we think he's done something untoward to her. But this is like, no, 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 we don't need a gag like that. No, no. The family know it's coming. They know it's going to happen. Maybe they think, maybe they take a bit of his advice and let her go through it to see if it helps. Because they do that at
Mm.
certain points, don't they? I think that might be a bit later.
Yeah, I think so. And then they uh I do like the paintings of elephants in the background. And I think you can assume that these are Lucy's paintings.
Yes. Now, did you make the same connection with elephants that I have?
Oh yeah,
Because yeah,
I mean, I didn't, but as soon as you said that, it's like, yeah, of course, elephants are known for having a incredible memory.
yeah, elephant doesn't forget.
Mm.
Which I think I only picked up on that when I was doing the minutes. I never made that connection when I was watching the film. And I was like, oh my god, elephants! It's great. That's like a nice little touch that she'd be obsessed with elephants, and maybe she doesn't know why.
Yeah, could be. And then we get Doug and Marlon popping in, and then it cuts to a little bit later, and we have Dan Aykroyd's doctor coming back and having checked on her.
I was
Um,
so happy to see him in this film. I had no idea he was in it. When he first turned up, I lost my mind. I love him. I love him. And yeah, okay, people think he's a weirdo because he likes aliens and stuff and ghosts for real. I don't care. You do you, man. Love you. You make amazing vodka as well. Wow.
yeah, it's funny, and I talked about this on whenever we were talking about Fight Club, but I guessed it on Gross Point Blank Minute Debbie Radio 79.5 FM, and so I forgot that Dan Aykroyd is in both of those movies. He was in that and this as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's great. I think because we just now, even though he's been in loads of stuff, now you mostly just go, oh yeah, the guy from Ghostbusters. It's like, yeah, he's actually been in a lot more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like this admission from Doug where he says, even where he admits, even though I can't kick your ass, my sister sure can.
That's another bit of he's quite positive there in his he's safe in his masculinity as we talked
Mm,
about on Fight Club because he's like no, no, look, okay, I might be a bodybuilder and stuff, but it's not about that. I can't fight you, but she can.
mhm.
And that doesn't emasculate him in any way. He's like, no, she's
Yeah,
much better than me.
and I also like the fact that that the doctor says something to him, and then we get Doug being suddenly overprotective of Henry. And I
Mm.
think that's a very important moment, especially in this film, because that shows that Doug, especially, but by proxy Marlon, have accepted Henry into their family group. They fully accepted him as being Lucy's boyfriend,
Yeah,
and they are completely on board with this relationship. And Doug, thinks of him as like part of the family practically.
it's quite sweet. Yeah,
Hmm.
because you don't expect that. Again, in these movies, it's usually antagonistic, and it's like keep your hands off my daughter, even without the disability angle.
Hmm.
But it's quite nice to see. Okay, yeah, they have like a few falling out moments like this. It feels very familial, actually, like a proper family unit would act.
Yeah.
They're almost like halfway to being brothers at this point. And what do brothers do? They fight.
Mhm. Yeah, and we've gotten, similar moments with Doug and Lucy earlier on whenever he's like betting her on the videotaped football game.
Yeah, I loved that bit. That bit made me laugh as well because it's like you can see the look on his dad's face, like, "Don't you do that? Don't you?" They've obviously had that conversation 1,000 times, and he's doing it though. He's like, I'm gonna predict it exactly." Ha ha ha.
Yeah, and then we get the repeat of the walrus penis joke, although this time Dan Aykroyd's character he says it's the proper way, where whenever Henry did it the first time around, he pawned off the largest one on Nick, the cook.
I love. So did the doctor, did he hear it from him? Do you think it's not just like a gag that everyone says? He's heard it, when it's been said to him this way.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure about where he heard it, if it is just kind of a common joke, even though we do get Henry mumbling into his mug, that was my joke.
I tell you what, it's a good joke.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker
And
for us just a stupid dick joke.
I also love the fact that it gets a huge laugh out of Marlon too. And I also get the impression that, especially like with Henry's reaction, that I don't think Marlon has ever laughed that hard at any of Henry's jokes ever before.
No, absolutely not. No, no, no. It's the first time for everything.
Mhm.
I also love the way I can never remember the characters' names in any movie I watch. The listeners, I'm notoriously bad for names. I'll just say Dan Aykroyd when he.
No, honestly, I don't remember his name. I didn't look it up, and they don't say it in this scene, so I don't remember his name
Yeah,
at this point. I do know I remember all the other characters, of course, because I've been dealing with them all this season, but he only popped up in one other scene, and I don't remember.
it's taken me like 70 episodes of Miami Minutes to remember half of the Miami Connection characters, so don't worry. Well, Dan Aykroyd points out, whether it's true or not, basically everybody seems to know that he's juicing. He's taking steroids. The whole town makes jokes about it.
Mhm.
If he is, it's not really working, is it?
Well, I
No,
mean, compared
not in bad
to,
shape, but
well, I mean, if you think about it, this came out just a few months after Return of the King, where he was Samwise Gamgee.
yeah, true, true. He's
So
cut
if you
weight now.
compared, yeah, so if you compare how he looked as Samwise Gamgee to how he looks as Doug, then yeah, those steroids did. He bulked up pretty well and lost the Samwise weight.
I'd like to know if that was a gag put in sort of from behind the scenes. Like he probably turned up on this looking good, and they were like, "How did you get in shape? What the hell? Are you on the steroids or something?" Like, I put it in the movie
I mean,
because
you
it's
also have
quite a
to,
difference. Like he looks
yeah,
great. He's in good shape. Don't get me wrong. It's just you assume someone on steroids is going to be some giant muscle bound buff
yeah,
daddy.
like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime.
Yeah, yeah. Which tell you what, I'm a big Arnie fan, and I did really like how he addressed that in his autobiography, because he basically says like, yeah, I was on steroids, of course I was. But he points out like, oh, everybody was like, it wasn't seen as a weird thing that's going to harm you. It was like nowadays, people taking protein shakes. That's how he saw it. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you take your protein, you have your steroids, and you hit the gym.
Yeah, that was the same thing. That was, a big part of the that American Gladiators documentary.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet. It looks good.
Yeah, it is crazy. That's a fantastic series.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I was shocked. We literally actually just talked about this, me and Niall, my co-host, yesterday. I was shocked to find out that American Gladiators came first, right? Because ours is just called Gladiators.
Mhm.
So I assumed with that naming convention, ours came first. Apparently not. It's the other way. So it's like, oh, okay. Well, why didn't we call it like British Gladiators or something? Very straight. And it's rebooting. It's coming back in a couple of weeks. It's our version of Gladiators is hitting the screens like once again.
Oh, interesting.
Mm.
I wonder if a reboot of American Gladiators is coming at some point as well. Trying to. I don't know how successful that documentary series was in general. I know I watched it and enjoyed it, and I know a couple other people that also did that, but I haven't seen anything about the reboot. But especially if it's like a streaming thing, then a lot of those tend to pop up. Like
Yeah.
you have to be in the right targeted audience to see those kind of ads.
Well, hopefully they do. You could even get old Samwise here as a guest. Could have like guest announcers or something.
Mhm. And the other thing that I think is really interesting about this scene, because we get this setup and it's almost like a typical sitcom setup where you have one character that overhears part of another character's conversation, but they miss
Mm,
the important bit and they completely misconstrue what they're talking about. But in this one, she actually is overhearing the conversation in its entirety. Like she's not misconstruing, she comes to a correct um, interpretation of it.
yeah. Well, in effect, that's why it's so emotional. Because if
Hmm.
it, again, as you say, other movies do it the other way and it's funny, blah blah blah. But here, it spins that. If she'd misheard something, it wouldn't be you wouldn't find it so sad. I don't think.
Hmm.
Whereas her hearing the truth is sad.
Yeah, and again, this goes right back to the whole disability element of this movie, and I think it handles that really well. Where this this feels like a very real moment of disabled guilt, where
Mm,
Lucy, as the disabled person, feels guilty about the people around her having to support her and not being independent, and that she feels like she's being a burden on her loved ones.
that's the perfect word for it. Yeah, she feels like she's a burden. It's like, oh, I'm causing all of this hassle and pain and things for people. That's me. I've done that. Even though that's not the truth, of course. It's not on you. But that's
Mhm.
how you would feel.
Yeah, and I'm like I didn't do a ton of research, but I am absolutely certain that that is a very common sentiment from a lot of disabled people.
Absolutely is. Yeah, yeah. I used to work in a mental health hospital. So a lot of people with like Alzheimer's and stuff, and it's similar to this in a way. They often have to they have to be told again and again what's going on, and then they feel bad about it. So a lot of people they stop telling their loved ones like you're suffering from this because it's like, well, all it's going to do is upset them and me. Everyone's going to be upset. That's not nice.
Yeah, and we also get another, I think, something that feels very real with people dealing with permanent and severe disabilities is this moment of Henry's delusion that he is fixing her in some way. Like,
Mm,
he's we're making progress. Like I can tell that she's improving, and I kind of feel like that's very similar, or at least I assume that that's similar to someone that is dealing with like a paralyzed partner,
mm,
and that they look at signs like, oh, she could feel her big toe. Oh, she could, she felt sensation in her shin today.
mm.
I think that she's getting better. Maybe this is on the road of her coming to a miraculous recovery and will eventually be able to walk again. But in most of those cases, the paralyzation is permanent, and that these are kind of delusions of them getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which again is a fascinating thing for them to even address in a in a comedy.
Mhm.
You'd think like, we won't go that deep on this kind of stuff, but they go there, and it works somehow. Because is she ever going to get any better? I mean, the end would suggest maybe not at all. She doesn't even remember having
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, they throw in just the slightest hint of um not remembering, but the connection with her subconscious and her dreams.
Yeah.
But her conscious like they show that there is no improvement, and they imply that there's never going to be any improvement in her conscious memory.
Hmm. So it's more like maybe he sees success as not that she remembers him, but feels like a je ne sais quoi, like an unnameable connection to him once they start speaking again.
Mhm.
Like there's something in there that's like, oh, this guy's cool, we've got a bond of some sort.
Yeah, and then I feel like the movie thinks that it's getting too serious at this point. So then they throw in the joke with Dan Aykroyd where he says that he wishes that his wife has Goldfield syndrome so she can forget about this insult which he said about her mother, and then he repeats that insult again in full to Marlon, Doug, and the audience.
Yeah, it's quite an insult. Whoa. I wasn't expecting that. Holy crap.
Mhm.
Yeah, Dan,
And
Dan Aykroyd's character there, I think you've messed up, man.
yeah, and I feel like that's one of the moments where I think that goes a little bit too far. Like that's not the type of comedy that I appreciate as much these days.
No, I agree. At the time, I probably would have loved it because, I was the right age to enjoy silly little edgelord things. But now, yeah, I don't think the movie really needs that joke. Joking about
Mhm.
wanting your wife to be mentally ill. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, that's like taking it a little bit too far.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then the move and then we jump into the next scene and we get this moment of cuteness, bringing back the penguin and giving the penguin a bath,
I
which
love that.
that's
Living the
yeah.
dream right there. What could be better than spending your days bathing penguins?
Yeah, and then giving him this anchovy sundae, which looks fantastic. And we also have this bit of comedy with Ula has swimming with the dolphin and eating a potentially pot brownie.
uh, More than potentially, I think. Yeah, yeah. He also seems to imply, like, is he giving them to the animals? Because that's not good either, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that bit is intended to be a joke,
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah. See, that's
yeah.
the kind of it's not my kind of comedy, but it works in this movie. That fits,
Mhm.
what
where
not like
where
the Dan
Ula
Aykroyd
says,
joke.
yeah, where they imply that Ula is giving his pot brownies to the dolphins, and he says, "Well, how do you think I get him to do those flippy things?"
I mean, maybe dolphins would like it. I don't know. It could be good for them. They're very intelligent animals. They're one of the
Yeah.
few animals, if I recall, that can correctly identify their own reflection because they've done tests with them, like drawing things on their
Mhm.
head and showing them a mirror, and they notice that it's on their head. They go and try and get it off, like rub it off, Um, so they are aware that's me, which is quite rare for a lot of animals.
Yeah. And I think in general, like drugs, uh, the chemistry of drugs doesn't always affect different animals' brains in the same way, similar to like I don't believe that pot really affects cats, and yet
Oh,
catnip, gives cats that is like catnip is basically like pot for cats.
yeah, it's weird. It's weird. It has two effects. This is the strangest thing to me. If my cat eats the catnip, it makes her like stoned. If she rubs in it and rolls all over it, it's more like speed. It's the complete opposite effect. It's like, whoa, it's like two drugs in one. But I imagine if humans tried to eat it, it wouldn't do anything. I don't know. I've never tried. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's basically just grass. I think that catnip has like zero effect
Yeah.
on
It's like part
people.
of the mint family as well, isn't it? I think. So it's like, oh well, okay.
Yeah. And then we get this great moment from Lucy where again I feel like this is a something that this movie does well as with empowering Lucy and
Mm.
giving her a lot of agency as a character. The fact that she on her own came up with the idea of making this journal, and that's like her version of the videotape, and she explains it very well that like the videotape is like somebody else telling me about my life, where this journal is me telling myself about my life.
Yeah, I thought that was genius having that in the movie because not only do I think it will help her overall if she ever can get any, but she's also right, isn't she? As good as that tape is, it's better coming from her.
Mhm.
And although we know he's not doing this, for instance, this way she's not going to be gaslit. She can't gaslight herself in theory.
Mhm.
Um,
Even
you
though
know,
they do imply that she at least has some involvement in making the updates to the videotapes.
hmm. But even so, you know, it is the videos we've seen. It is mostly people saying stuff about her. So I
Mhm.
guess it's just nice to have it in your own words. You
Yeah.
about you to you.
Yeah, and then this
It
movie
feels more
turns
real.
into, yeah, it's definitely. And then this movie turns into Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind for a minute.
That's the weirdest thing. Yeah, I never expected going into this I was going to make a connection between those two movies, but that's the closest thing I could think of, even though it's a totally different style of film.
Mhm. Absolutely. But and in a way that this is such a bizarre scene to talk about because in a way that this is like such a horrible way to break up with this guy. But
Hmm.
again, it makes perfect sense in like the way her mindset is, especially with the fact that she's so Lucy is such a smart character and that she understands how to deal with her condition very quickly. And
Hmm.
she makes a lot of intelligent decisions throughout the movie once she understands what's going on with her.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
and today, especially, she understands that this is something that I have to do today because if I put it off until tomorrow, I will not remember it. And I like not only that, even if write it down in my journal, I won't fully remember all the emotions and all
yeah.
like everything involved that made me come to this decision. So I have to follow through with this before I go to sleep tonight.
It's such a mature decision. Like that's a
Mm.
bold thing to do, and again, it makes a character much more relatable and lovable. That she's gone right. Okay, this is horrible, but sometimes you've got to do something horrible. The
Mm.
only thing I don't like is the way she words it. I think she says that she plans to erase him completely, so it's as if you never existed. It's like, whoa, okay, you haven't got to say it in those words. Come on, be careful.
Mm.
I'm going to erase you. You never existed. You mean nothing to me. But
Even though that does
maybe,
I think it does make sense. Yeah, like she is in her mind, she's doing this for his benefit.
yeah,
So he can go on and live his life and finish it, like work towards his plan of going to Alaska to study the walruses. But yeah, that's that whole, I'm going to erase you completely. But again, it also makes sense that she doesn't like, if she didn't erase him completely, then the next day she might like look back in her journal and
yeah, yeah.
like almost in a memento way, like find this mystery, like who is this person that I fell in love with? Let me go seek him out again.
Yeah, and then it would all start. That's the sequel. If you don't have the ending, that's how you set up a franchise. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like they divorce one day and then, she keeps coming back to him because she keeps reading about him and
oh.
seeing how wonderful he is.
Now it is turning into Eternal Sunshine. I agree with what she's saying, though. In
Mm,
like at this point, at this stage, knowing what you know, ignore where it goes. How is she gonna have a family realistically?
yeah.
She's right. Like, well, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah, this definitely makes sense as something that she would have come to on, you know, with what she learned throughout this day.
Yeah. Oh, it's really this whole part is really sad. Like,
Yeah, and especially this I feels borderline cruel. Like
yeah,
it's a weird mix of sweet and cruel. And I think the only way that the movie really gets away with it is because they sprinkle the humor throughout because I think this could be played in a very different way where she's like, okay, I'm making you erase our relationship for me.
that's that's tough, isn't it? Because yeah, they're going through all these happy memories,
Mm,
destroying them before their very eyes.
mhm.
But the thing is, he's going to be stuck with these memories. It's
Yeah.
not destroying it for him. This is painful.
Yeah, it's like it's very bittersweet, but I can kind of understand her point of view, like on the sweet side of it, because like the positive way of looking at it is she's wanting to share her memories with him so that her memories of the relationship live on through him.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose it's an interesting dilemma. I don't know what you'd do in this situation because who the hell has been in this situation? So few people, you know.
Yeah, I mean, literally nobody because
Yeah,
this. I mean, I've talked about it before, but this condition is a real condition, but it does not exist in the way that it's presented in this movie.
yeah. They've changed it up, haven't they? Which is fine. Which is fine.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
I have no issues with them, taking a real condition and fictionalizing it to work with the story that they wanted to tell.
especially when they treat it quite. Even though, again, we've said even though it's a comedy, they treat the condition sensitively.
Mhm.
Some of the other jokes in the movie aren't, but usually the condition itself isn't the butt of the joke, you know,
Yeah.
which is nice. Um, but yeah, I guess you could see it as a nice thing. In the, I've always wondered, not that I sit and think about death, but I've always wondered, is it better to know you're gonna die, or to just die? Because if you know, you get to say goodbyes and things like that, or is that worse? So she's kind of doing that here, because in a way, she's not dying, but that is going to die. That
Yeah,
relationship
the
is dead.
relationship is dying.
It's going to be gone the next day, like it never existed,
Yeah.
erased. Um, so is it better that they've had this nice last moment together? She gets to say a goodbye to him. It
I
could
mean, with
be.
anything, it's different for everybody because I
Mm,
think depending on the person, some people would relish the opportunity to say goodbye, and other people would focus on the worrying about and the
mm.
anxiety of what's to come.
Yeah, yeah. It's oh, I don't know what I'd want.
Yeah, and I referenced Memento once already, but I feel like this moment, especially with this updating her journal, reminds me of the way that Leonard had his police report, and he keeps taking out pages
Yeah,
and scribbling things out, and that this new journal feels like Leonard's updated police report, and I'm wondering if, as the years go on and this journal builds day by day, that she would have to start making like summary pages so that way she
mm,
wouldn't have to read through like books and books of journals in order to catch up on her life story. She would just be able to read a few like summary pages, and then, if she wanted to, she could dig into one part of her life on one day, but she wouldn't have to read through her entire journal every single day because
yeah.
that's something that becomes more and more of a chore as the years go by.
What I would do is I would have two books. I'd have one that's the summary. This is the key stuff you've got to know. This is the one you've got to read every day. And then I'd have a collection, maybe, yeah, maybe not even two, maybe loads. Have a collection of detailed ones that you build and grow and expand. And then you can, when you need to remind yourself about something really in depth, you can go to them rather than just, oh, what happened last week kind of thing.
Mhm. And the other thing that I noticed, which I didn't double check, but I feel like this strengthens the connection to Memento, and I'm curious if it was done intentionally or not. But I feel like the handwriting in this journal is very similar to Leonard's handwriting on his Polaroids.
Oh my god. Okay, I did not think about that. Oh, gee, I need to watch these movies back to back now. I think they're connected. I think they're part of the same universe.
Yeah, especially because like whenever you think of handwriting in general, that I mean it's not necessarily true, but the stereotype is you have like the feminine handwriting, which is like flowing,
Mhm.
curvy, and loopy, and then you have the more masculine, which is the more straight lines. It's
Yeah.
more like striking. And this, looking at it from that perspective, this handwriting feels more masculine than it does feminine.
I've always thought Drew had a bit of a mask energy to her anyway. So that fits for me. So I think it's her actual handwriting. That's what I'm going with. Because I think she's got a mask side. I could see her as a drag king.
Could be. I didn't do any research on Drew Barrymore's handwriting
You should
or
have done.
the
You failed the listeners.
and then of course we can't have a sad moment in a movie without having the world around them start crying as well in the form of rain
Yeah.
as as she asks for one last first kiss. And that's like that really just puts the capper at the end of this day and this scene. And it's really like so sweet and sad and heartbreaking. And like it's definitely something that you don't necessarily expect coming from a typical Adam Sandler movie.
No, not at all. Not at all. I didn't expect it. And I know some of his movies do have it, but I don't know. This, out of all of them, when you read the synopsis, I was like, well, it's just going to be silly jokes, you know. But that was my favorite line of the movie, actually. The whole movie. Can I have one last first kiss? In fact, that could be the name of the movie, couldn't it? If it wasn't 50 First Dates, one last first kiss, because you'd be like, oh, what's that about? It would capture the imagination.
No.
Um, it's very sad when you know everything. It's like, oh, geez.
Yeah, and that like the last thing and the thing that I think is kind of funny is, since it's raining so hard out, they have this trash can fire inside, and I feel like that's getting a little bit out of control. Hopefully, Lucy keeps an eye on that fire.
Yeah, that's quite extreme. I'd be worried at this point. I don't. I would get scared with any kind of flames, but that's out of control.
Yeah, a little bit, especially if it's just paper, because you would think that if it was just paper, it should have burned out by now, because paper burns pretty like it flashes, but then it
Yeah.
burns out like in just a minute or two.
Well, it also looks like it'd be. My first thought would be it'd be cold, but is that the English person in me? Because when it rains, it's freezing. But is what climate's this going to be like? A bit more humid?
I mean, it's Hawaii, so I imagine tropical.
It looks, yeah, kind of like tropical humid sort of a thing. So
I think it's supposed to be take place. I mean, it's possible that it's October, November. I know that her initial accident took place in October, and they said that this movie takes place about a year after her accident. So I think October, November is when
so
this movie supposedly takes place. So I don't know how cold Hawaii gets in November, but I imagine it's still pretty warm.
it's that fire will be pumping out heat too. Oh God, you'd be so sweaty. It's like, oh no, no, no. But she's clearly not sweaty. I don't want to be crude, but it did the early to mid 2000s thing of going, yeah, okay, nipples for some reason. And it's not
Yeah,
me being a dirty creep. You can't miss them. It's like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. It's like I'm wearing a white shirt and a white bra in the rain.
yeah. Just an eyeful. You see everything, which is fine.
Yeah,
I'm not faulting her or the movie or anything. It's just it was a surprise.
yeah. And then this date ends with Henry backing out of frame, and so that's the end of this date. Do you have anything else to say about this scene?
No, I think that was pretty much everything we hit on there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, there is one line I did like that I didn't address. It was Adam Sandler and me and characters. I'm trying to think of the character names and I just can't do it, can I?
Doug or Marlon?
Which one's a brother?
Her brother is Doug.
Doug. See, me and character. I would literally have to watch this movie 50 times. It's ADHD for you. That's the problem. Doug, he defends the shape of his head, right?
Yeah.
He says, it's not his fault his head is shaped like that. And I thought that was quite nice because, again, I said they had a bit of a brotherly thing going on.
Yeah,
Wish
I
I had a
did.
bro in my life defending me like that. That's nice.
Yeah, I did bring that up, but I forgot to mention that it was, him defending the shape of his head. Like I
Yeah.
brought up him defending him, but I forgot. I didn't write down what exactly he was defending him about.
It's quite nice, isn't it? Because he doesn't have to really. He doesn't
Hmm.
really know him that well yet. He's known him for a little while, but it's like, yeah, you know what? Nah, I'm your bro. Whether literal, in whatever level you want to take it. I'm your
Yeah.
bro. I got your back. I'm going to defend you. Nothing wrong with your head. Body
Yeah.
positive as well. I've got a weird head. I'm bald. you know?
And then one last thing that I wanted to ask you about, but before I let you go, because
Mm,
I've
mm.
this is a character that's kind of fascinating me, especially the fact that that this came out in 2004, and the at the trans community is very different from 2004 to now in 2024. And Alexa, as she's presented in the movie, I believe that she is, she's a woman that looks masculine, and she often gets, referred to as potentially a man.
Yeah,
And but it's very like very happy, and like she is a good, it seems like a real friend to Henry as a character. And from my point of view, I feel like they don't, like, none of the jokes surrounding her mannish look is mean-spirited, but I am curious because you yourself are non-binary, and I feel like if this movie was made today, that Alexa would be a non-binary character. So I am curious about your take on Alexa as a character, and how that's handled in this movie.
yeah. I think if you did this film now, you would have to make the character non-binary, um, because I don't. How do I word it? I don't think they mean bad with any of it, but some of the jokes won't fly for a lot of people. I
Mhm.
think some people would be offended, rightly or wrongly. I personally don't care. But I think if you had this kind of character and you were making jokes like that, I don't think you could. I think that you'd do it now. You'd make them a non-binary character, and you'd mostly portray them in a really positive light. People wouldn't make fun of them. Is that right or wrong? I don't know, but I think that's what they would do. I liked the character. Um, some of the jokes I was a bit like, oh, okay, you're just being a bit mean about how someone looks. But some of the jokes were funny,
Mhm.
which is how I sort of interpret a lot of the jokes in Adam Sandler movies, to be honest. And it's the time where they were jokes like this were the norm, whether they should have
Yeah.
been or not. It was quite normal to do things like that. So it is a case of you have to put yourself back into a certain era as well. Things change, they grow, they evolve. I don't think any of the jokes were really, really nasty about her. Um, but it is interesting how they don't ever come to a conclusion. It's not
Yeah.
so in a way maybe that is sort of addressing a non-binary topic without the words to address it. They never find out, oh, she's definitely a woman, or oh, it's a man. It kind of becomes irrelevant
Mhm.
later on. Like, nobody seems to care.
Yeah,
Nobody's offended.
and she's always included. She's never excluded for any reason. And
Yeah,
she's dating Doug at the end of the movie.
which I loved. I thought that was really sweet that they've found each other. And again, it still doesn't even come up then, because
Mhm.
that's where a lot of movies might make another joke about it, and you find out, oh, they're a man. you know, um, you could make a crude gag about it, but it's like no, it kind of stops mattering to anybody, and I like that aspect of it. I think you
Yeah.
could handle it more sensitively, but you didn't do that then. you know,
Especially Adam Sandler didn't do that then, for
Adam
sure.
Sandler did not do that. Yeah, I mean the one for me that I did find very hard to go back and watch was Ace Ventura,
Yeah.
because I loved that movie. And you watch it now, and you're like, oh, it's really transphobic though. Like those jokes are
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, I've
difference.
watched that like maybe 5 years ago, and yeah, it's a hard movie. I mean, like 75% of the movie is still funny, but then the other
Yeah.
25% is really bad.
Well, like when he finds out that she used to be a man, and he's crying in the shower and burning his clothes and scrubbing his mouth, it's like, oh, whoa, okay, that's another level of nasty. You wouldn't get that
Yeah,
in this. This is more.
right.
It's more like they're curious than anything.
Yeah, they're like,
They just want
you
to
know,
know.
is that really a man? I don't know. And then the unspoken is like, I don't know and I don't care.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think some people wouldn't read that into it because these days you would approach it differently.
Mhm.
But the characters do seem more just to curiosity of like they never ever go, oh, gross, is she a man? Disgusting. Oh, it's never that kind of thing like Ace Ventura did.
Yes. Yeah, and especially that Ace Ventura bit where, whenever they reveal it at the end and like
Ah,
everybody just, oh,
yeah, yeah. It
yeah.
really. I was mortified because I
Mm.
I had such fond memories of the film. I was, oh no. Whereas this, I think you could go back to it. Won't. I don't think it'll offend most people. I think it'll be fine.
Yeah,
But you just wouldn't do it this way now. You'd change how it's
right.
how it's done, even in a comedy. I
Definitely.
think.
All right, but thank you so much for joining me and talking to me and uh spending 3 hours with me today talking about some Fight Club and 51st Dates, two very different movies.
That was why
And
it was the most appealing to me to do it on the same day. I was like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, we're going to have a real tonal shift. Great.
yeah, it's one thing, the difference between Memento and Memento and 51st Dates, but Fight Club and 51st Dates, that's kind of on the same level.
And it appeals to how my brain works. It's probably why I'm non-binary, to be honest, is because I like differences. I like change. I like things that just float around. I don't like to nail things down, you know? I like punk rock, but I like Lady Gaga, you know? I like dub reggae, but I like industrial metal, you know? When it comes to movies, I mean, my favorite movie is Return of the Jedi, and it's because it's got a tonal shift in it. You know, you've got the darkest things in Star Wars, the Emperor scenes. Nothing is as dark as that. And then you've got
Mhm.
the lighter stuff. You've got the Ewoks, and they even let the darkness penetrate the Ewok side of the story a little bit when the Ewoks are dying.
Yeah. And they're implied to be well, not cannibals, but they're implied to have eaten people.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like such a like whoa 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 where are we going with this? And that's what I like. And I so in a way the two movies together perfect perfect.
Yeah. And so for one last time today, but for the first time on this show, why don't you take a moment and let everybody know where you can be found online?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to hear more of me, you can listen to my shows. I have three podcasts because I'm stupid. Well, technically, I've got
I, I'm
technically I've
stupid
got
too.
five.
Yeah, I'm stupid too. I have three. I have three active podcasts that I'm doing at the same time, and one lapsed podcast.
It's not easy, listeners. You listen to this and appreciate the work that's gone into it because it's a lot of work. I'm telling you. But yeah, you can get my three Bat Minute, where we go through the Batman movies 1 minute at a time. We've done all of the original Burton, well, all of them. There's two. We did Batman '89, we did Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and then we've just done Mask of the Phantasm, the animated one. And we're going to have a little mini season about another animated movie before we go into the next film, which we have settled on, but I'm going to keep a secret because we were going, chronologically at first, but now we have to sort of mix it up a bit. So there's that Bat Minute. There's also Miami Minutes, which is about the '80s, the lost '80s Taekwondo epic Miami Connection about drug dealing motorcycle ninjas, which is an amazing sentence. And I have another one, Hedwig Inch by Angry Inch, about the queer punk musical Hedwig and the Angry Inch, which is a movie that's so good I once watched it every day for 30 days. 31st viewings, maybe. But look all of them up anywhere. They're all
Yeah.
over, Spotify, iTunes, or Apple. Is it Apple Podcasts? Is it now? I don't know. I've never had an Apple product.
Yeah.
All of them on all the usual platforms. I put it up on every. They're all on YouTube. No one listens to podcasts on YouTube, but I put them there anyway, just in case. There's one random guy who does listen to Miami Minutes on YouTube. He's the only YouTube listener, and he comments on every episode. So thank you.
Wow. And of course, I'll have links to all those projects in the show notes as well. And I have been Bubbawheat, and you can find me on all the available social medias where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on all the available podcatchers, as well as we have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group. You can join that to discuss episodes as they come out, as well as have discussions about other time loop movies, TV shows, any other uh, media. If it's time loop related, then it is welcome in that Facebook group. And until next time, I will see you again for breakfast next week.
Henry, wait! Could I have one last first kiss?